We have a very tight competitor in the next room. That's why I would like to thank you for coming. In this panel, we have colleagues who know one another because they worked in various places together, so I will call them by their name. I will not say Mr. and Mrs. So we will have a chat, and during this one my friends will share their experience with you, and they are the ones who will be investing. So we have the investors and the counselors. I could be called a counselor as well, but I am here with my hat as the director of TUREP, and I will give the floor to each and every one of you. I will try to start with the money part. And as you may know, in last February we had a climate crisis, and actually we had a climate crisis last year, this time, and now it is an energy crisis. With that turning into an energy crisis, we had to seek for some solutions, especially in Europe and in our geography, and that could not be solved so far. For the climate crisis, we still had time, and the objectives were set, especially during COP26. The countries made commitments, so we were supposed to go in line with the action plan. Then the war broke out. Some actually estimated, but in the end we have problems along with finance and insurance, and our energy investors also had to stop for a while and watch around, and we have held our speeches since yesterday, and still we have grown. Regarding the renewable energy, we can say there is an agreement that the renewable energy is a way out from the climate crisis and the energy crisis. I would like to share something with you. I think it was in August. Biden approved the law on fighting the inflation, and they are speaking about a resource of $370 billion for investing in energy and energy-related investments. And it is still not clear how it will be allocated and where it will be allocated. And India declared that it will invest $300 billion in renewable energy in the upcoming years. And I turned on BBC World, and there was an interview with the Ministry of Energy of India, and the interviewer was pushing the minister, saying, "You're using coal, you're not doing what you have committed." And he said, "Actually, we are doing, and we keep doing it, and we're fighting for it." So why did I mention the States and India? We can also talk about China, but we don't have time, because they are the ones who pollute the most. Therefore, they are the ones who have to invest in the renewable. And we still don't know how those numbers will be allocated. The third and the last information, EU also speaks about another investment package. In the last year, $6 billion of the package have come to the investment stage. So the numbers are actually crazy, $200 billion, so they're three-figure billion dollars, and they have the resources. However, we don't know when they will turn into a reality and add a positive effect on carbon neutral target. I would like to come back to Turkey. We have been discussing over the last 2 days. There is a positive approach both from the public side and the investors side, and as TÜREP we're trying to keep it alive as much as we can on the investor and the public sides. And the participants have some information about what we have discussed so far. From the macro level to the micro level, Turkey has its own policies, but what do we see in practice, and how are we supposed to turn this good intention into an action? So we will have a chit chat around it. Now I would like to give the floor to Hassan first. Can you please tell us about yourself first, Hassan? And you are here on behalf of the investment bank, and we would like to hear your perspective, your corporate perspective, and in order to discuss about it thoroughly, we would like to talk about YEKDEM, both the present one and the one to come. Maybe you could divide that into two parts. There are some projects within YEKDEM. Can you please tell us about it? What are you thinking of, and what do you reckon?
Biraz daha mikrofonu yukarı kaldırır mısınız? Şimdi daha iyi duyuyorum. Duyuyorsunuz değil mi? Şöyle, arzurun olarak TSKB dediğimiz silahlı kuvvetlerle işimiz olmaz diyecek bir ekip olduğunu umut ederek başlıyorum.
Actually, I'm here on behalf of Turkish Industrial Development Bank, and we have been in collaboration with the wind energy investors. I should tell you about our bank as well. It is an investment and development bank, and İşbank is the main shareholder, and I work in the corporate side of the bank. It is my 18th year in the bank, and I have experienced all the processes in the bank on my own, and I would like to tell you about YEKDEM mechanism and other support mechanism and what is ahead of us. Considering the former YEKDEM process, I made a speech in November 2019, and back then we were expecting 1,000 megawatts every year. And there was a presentation back then, and looks like what we discussed that day was realized. We have now 11,000 megawatts, so roughly 1,000 megawatt was added every year, and we intended to catch up with the former YEKDEM mechanism, and the investors here also has contributed, and hopefully we will achieve 30,000 megawatts very soon. I will tell you about it later on, and I was able to attend the earlier session with Adnan Bey, and they are very similar processes, and we were one of the rare banks, and Adnan Bey was also included, and we supported the investors. We had nearly 50 wind power plants, and the project is costing us around $6 billion, and wind energy plants are still our biggest portfolio. And we learned financing actually, and especially in terms of the social liabilities. Maybe we're one of the luckiest banks in Turkey, because the criteria for getting such resources from the external countries is carrying out such projects, and we actually developed our perspective, and the investors were actually evolved, I think, in terms of their working practice. And back then I said you cannot find the support so easily, and I was telling about the investor. So without the transparency, if I cannot see the total debt of the investor, I couldn't possibly invest. But then the income was significant, and the investors accelerated the transparency. So I believe we will experience a process in which access to funding will be more limited, and I believe we can achieve our targets. As for the real industry, we could say that it was causing a burden on the real industry, and every time I delivered this speech I said we have to look at it from the perspective of the current deficit. If we do not have renewable energy projects, we will have to buy more natural gas, and that will obviously cause a negative effect on the current deficit. That's why we created these facilities from the international funds and offered them to the investors. So that is the process with YEKDEM. You have 2.5 minutes more if you like to say something else. Well, when we look at the current CDS level of Turkey, we can say that we will not have a very comfortable process with access to the international funds. And in terms of macroeconomic balances, it is now a fragile process, and there are more Turkish funders, and in our conversation with the investors, we see that it will be a more precautious process, and we can say that from the insurance premiums. The risk premium for the banks have now increased. Therefore, the processes will be maybe less attractive, and the local funders are also interested in this process. I would like to ask one question. For those who are almost out of the existing YEKDEM, maybe some extensions will be carried out for some power plants to increase their capacity. What is your view on them? Thank you. It is important because when we first started the funding, people wanted to stay in YEKDEM, and we were doing the same. We were saying you shouldn't exceed YEKDEM duration, or it should be 1 or 2 years at max. And we have now put YEKDEM in the background because we're working with the stakeholders, and we don't have a prediction below $8. As compared to the former method, we think it is fundable, and this is what we do. In the earlier session, Abdullah Bey also mentioned about the projects, and half of the projects are relevant to capacity expansion. So the capacity expansions will also be funded by us. But I can tell you one step ahead. Our bank tends to fund such renovations, but some financial restrictions exist, so any project funded by another bank could be funded by our bank on a voluntary basis. And if we are unable to offer extra or additional funding to our clients, we can ask for the guarantees from their other bank agreements. Now I would like to talk to Uğur. He is here on behalf of Maxis, and I will ask you the same question about the existing YEKDEM. You are granting the investors money, of course. So what do you think about such projects And would you allocate funds to
Maxis girişim sermayesi
such
portföyündeki
projects?
Mahşeyi
I
Kep'ten
am
buradayım. O da direktör olarak
here on
çalışıyorum.
behalf of Maxis,
İş Bankası'nın iştiraki biz aslında.
and we are actually an affiliate of Işbank, and we have our investments with venture capital, and we invested in airlines and logistics. Hundreds and thousands of projects were fulfilled, and the first one was made last year, and we thought it is the right time and it is the right partner. Why was it the right time? Because when we looked at the price cycles with the impact of the pandemic, we were predicting that the risks were minimized in 8 to 10 years perspective, and also with Adnan Bey's vision and Polat Energy vision, we made the investment. Concerning YEKDEM, that was a supportive mechanism for us to make the investment, and knowing that the power plants were to benefit from it actually gave confidence to the investors. Along with that, in 2011, when these things first started, the installed power was 1800 megawatt, and now it is 11,000 megawatts, and the banks funded nearly $30 billion, and equities was 20% and 80% were funded by the banks, because this shows us the success of the YEKDEM. The banks were able to collect their amount, and that's why they kept supporting. Therefore, YEKDEM is a pushing power. I should also say, as fund managers, we have a different perspective from the creditors or the banks, because there are investors constructing such plants and there are those who need the money. And the difference is that the creditors consider whether the loan will be paid back, and they will look whether the partner has the know-how or whether their equities will be enough. And banks are strong in terms of their guarantees. They ask for a letter of guarantee and they do anything to minimize their risk. We are on the side undertaking all the risks. We are not able to take such guarantees. So what do we do? Actually, there are two main indicators. One is ROI, the return on investment. While making an investment, what do we consider? We are actually allocating the investments of the third parties. Renewable is one area we invest, and in order to ensure that we fulfill our targets, we have to get our share from the assets we invest in. And secondly, the funds that we create are for a limited time. So we say to the investors that we have received their funds and we will give them their amounts back. Therefore, it is like a term agreement. That's why ROI is very valuable to us. And when the prices go up and the price dynamics are low, it is a good thing for us in terms of our income.
YEKDEM dışı santrallere yatırım yapar mısınız?
What do you invest in the power plants outside YEKDEM? It is not very easy now. We have to look at the feasibility for sure, because there are things affecting ROI, and price is not the only one there. There are the investment costs and turbine costs and the time required to install the turbines. We have to look at them project by project, and before the new model we would choose to go with YEKDEM. Some international funds have their different investment models. For example, it is like procurement through sales at a later stage. Actually, we mostly do this if there is a purpose to ensure the cash flow. We haven't had an experience in that regard so far, and you have to weigh from outside, and that is not something we would go for, because we would like to take the upside. We would like to benefit from the positive acceleration in the energy sector, and we don't mean to finance the cash flow only. We all have an intention to develop new models, and for my own company, when I ask for something from my colleagues, I tell them, do not tell me how it is not done, but tell me how it could be done. Of course, given the rules that we have and the conditions that we have. That's why I'm asking. Your perspective is not something that I criticize, but do you think there should be this perspective? For this perspective to be present, predictability must be very high. They have to look at our electricity generation costs. We do not only mean price by predictability, the frequency of the amendments in the regulations, or the complexity in the permission processes. So at a macro level, we would like to see the investment setting to be differentiated. Yes, in that case it could be considered. Also, the capital cost is also very high today. 10-year bonds of the states 4% interest. It is the highest since 2010. CDS is around 650 to 700. And in this setting, in order to have the incomes to prevent the costs, we have to go along with tough investors. So we found the money, we found the investors, and what would you like to say about it, Yüksel? For the plants that are almost exiting YEKDEM, for the investors who will make new investments, so can you tell us about the risk and insurance perspective? Let me introduce myself. My name is Yüksel Çakmur, and I started in the energy industry. I worked in Canada for 10 years for an energy company generating 15,000 megawatts. I have vast experience in the field. Then I worked for Enerjisa, and then I moved to the broker and risk management side. You said that earlier in the morning as well. There is a regulation initially, and the investors need to believe in this first, and they have to see that it is a feasible project, and then you have to find the money, and predictability is highly important there. And on the risk management side, today I will merge it with the insurance, and I would like to say 5 things for you. One of them is about the investment, and energy sector is very specific because you have to pay all the money upfront, and then you have to wait for 3 years maybe. Then you start planning to make money, but you don't know whether the electric price is set or not. Therefore, the construction and the investment term are one of the main risks, and insurance is one of the stakeholders here. And when we look at the stakeholders, there is the supply side, and there is the investor, there is the bank, and it is our duty to help them with the risks. So we work on the investor side and to work hard to eliminate those risks. As for YEKDEM, there is the electricity price risk, because you have no impact on the price for 20 years, and you have been talking about $6 and $3. So we want the price to be nice so that the bank could be paid, the workers could be paid, and process could be maintained. And YEKDEM is really great in this sense. This is an ideal model because it gives a guarantee of purchase for 20 years, and this way you can minimize the predictable risk. So today we were able to come to 12 gigawatt from 0 megawatt, and the price risk is very important. When you're exposed to the spot market, you can hedge the risk with gas, for example. Therefore, you either have YEKDEM or you have to wait, and there is nothing you can do. So there is an ambiguity of 50 to 100%, and that is a very important variable. Therefore, YEKDEM is almost indispensable for a bank, and it is not something that could be insured. The second ambiguity or the opportunity is if you have a good visibility of 10 to 20%, then there might be a deviation depending on the winds. This is acceptable in YEKDEM, and a 10 to 15% deviation is reasonable. As for the fourth thing, we draw a pie chart, and there is the price risk if there is no YEKDEM, and the second one is the exchange rate risk, and those are the companies that do not need the credit or financing. Therefore, you would like to see the exchange rate risk as well. So the more the cash flow is risky, the more money could be paid. Therefore, the derivative product can be hedged and you can borrow in Turkish lira. And for the investor, this is something special. The unplanned outage. When you make an investment, the rest will be details, and unplanned outage is you invest somewhere in the natural gas plant. If the turbine is damaged, you lose $900,000 and the company has to stop for 9 months. But in wind plant, you have a portfolio, so you will still incur a damage, but you can transfer the risk to your portfolio, or if you have a strong contract, then you can get your profit from the insurance company. So on parametric side, that could be the hedging. So for the unplanned outage, the insurance company is a helper.
Tamam. Çok teşekkürler. Ben hani üç katılımcımız da hani bu anlattıklarından sonra şöyle zorlayıcı değil de yani merak ettiğim bir şey var.
So there is something that I'm curious about.
Cevap vermek zorunda değilsiniz. Şu ana kadar işte
Till now,
sigortaladığınız veya yatırım yaptığınız veya kredi verdiğiniz ve fakat
considering your
olmaz böyle şey ya mahvolduk işte
insurance
alamadık krediyi
portfolio,
veya işte istediğimiz getiriyi elde edemedik veya işte bak pişman oldum sigortaladığıma
is there any project that you regretted
veya olduysa
funding?
toplam finansman, toplam yatırım
And if you
ve
had
toplam
any,
sigortaladığınız içerisindeki payı ne?
what was the share of it in your total portfolio? I can say for our investments, we have had 19 to 20 investments so far, and in one of them we had a damage where we incur a loss is the projects where the public restrictions are high. For example, we had a loss in the dialysis business,
Dolayısıyla
so we had to undertake the risk there.
neden yatırım yaptınız diyebilirim. Hani şey kısa cevap oldu lütfen kusura bakma. Şey yapmak için diğer konuşmacılarımızın süresinden almamak için. Hasan sende öyle bir cevap var mı?
Sayıma bakıyorum.
Well, we have funded 392
Yok sigortadan değil de hani
projects and we have insured all of them. Is there anyone in which you couldn't get your money? Well, we have had very large projects, but there have been also some smaller projects where we needed the insurance, and there was none in which the insurance didn't pay. Therefore, we didn't have any such problem. But I'm asking you, in terms of your operations, you have credited and you couldn't get your money.
Senin de olmadı ya bir tane projede Uğur sen zarar ettin. Yani 20'de bir.
Yes, there was only one out of 20 in which we incurred a loss, and you had none in 359 projects. Is there any project in which you regretted? Actually, if the insurance company is losing, then it means we are benefiting the client. We call it loss ratio, and we collect 300 to 500 million dollars in Turkey. What is the grand total? In terms of the premium volume, it is nearly $1 billion. I am representing a universe, and the loss ratios are negative in overall industry. Renewable is more profitable in Europe. However, in Turkey, in order to lower the prices, we mostly used the local market. And of course, then they will go to Europe and they have to increase the prices. I'm asking you because it is hard to convince the investor. So you're saying 356 projects. So you're representing an international organization, and when I speak about the risks, I say, did you ever go bankrupt in your projects in Turkey? And they say none. Therefore, it means they can invest. I am not coming from a banking background, so CDS and other economic data is different. So when they have a project in which they can incur a loss, of course, that will be different. We started with the hydroelectric plants, but because of the seasonality, there were times of drought. As a creditor, this is against the profit of the investor, of course. In the end, well, we're speaking according to our experience. There are maybe other things that you consider, of course. So what do you say if they want to insure? I can hear you very low. I am the CEO of Polat Energy, and we are one of the first companies in the industry. And the speaker is not audible.
Siz devam ederken benim bir imza için getirdiler. Ben hemen imza ettim.
Rüzgar enerji santralinin maliyetlerine baktığımızda,
well, considering the cost of the wind power plants, the majority of the cost
ve personel maliyetleri oluşturuyor sırasıyla. Bakım,
is personnel, maintenance, and maintenance is in foreign exchange. We have some plants that have completed almost 10 years now, and when we compare it with the former YEKDEM, we have to continue by comparing the former costs with the recent costs. The high inflation is the case everywhere, and the costs in USD and Euro also increase. As you also said, the financing institutions in Turkey also have to guarantee themselves. On the other hand, we can see that the costs are decreasing in the new YEKDEM mechanism, so the cost is increasing and the guarantee asked by the bank is decreasing, but the banks need more guarantee now. So they require a mechanism to further add the guarantee on the operational side. We have these things ahead of us. We have made the investments over the 10 years, and one of the problems that we encounter is we pay our credit to the financing institution, but we cannot distribute the profit to the capital owner, and one reason is credits and the loss because of the exchange rate difference. So in terms of distributing the profits, this difference cannot be reflected on the capital owner as a profit, and despite all, we would like to maintain our current position and invest in the new plants as Polat Energy, and the supply security will be the matter, and this industry should be more feasible in the future, and I believe it will bring profit to the capital owners. As Polat Energy, we believe in the wind, and we will continue our investments. As the investor Adnan Bey is here himself, thank you. You have used the time very effectively. In the second part, we can give you more time. We have to finish 15 past 4 p.m. so we should accelerate now. We have discussed with the investor as an advisor. What do you think?
Şimdi geliyor mu? Yok. Tam çalışıyor. Şuraya mı?
Şimdi geliyor. Kusura bakmayın. Ben ortayı biraz beklettim açıkçası. Çok iyi geldi bana orta.
I have waited for my turn, and it is the nice time to talk. I am working as an advisor. As a team, we help the banks and the financing institutions for funding and refunding. We have completed more than 60 transactions with sizes between $5 million and $20 million. Also, we supported one of the largest airport projects to be completed, which was over €1 billion. Accordingly, I was planning to deliver my speech under 3 headlines. I would like to tell you about the current debt mechanism and where we are in this current situation. The former YEKDEM was a very important milestone in the energy industry. In the last 20 years, more than $100 million have been invested in green energy projects, and $40 million were funded by the banks, and majority was due to YEKDEM. After YEKDEM, financing and project realization became more feasible and possible. Another thing is that there was an expectation of a change in the pricing mechanism, and all the stakeholders counted on this system. And in the last 10 years, a very successful system was established. On YEKDEM side, we think Euribor, the interest rates were very low when YEKDEM was first announced. Equipment costs were low as compared to now. Therefore, during that time, that was something that could be financed by all the stakeholders, and it became successful. And at that very point, when we look at the financing, we can see the rates of that 80-85%, and other than the investment period, we saw that the guarantees were leased, and we were able to see that the projects came to life, and they will confirm me they can continue as non-recourse, and this gives the investors the chance to focus on their later projects. YEKDEM actually offered a very important financing in this regard. And when we look at the current situation, we can see that a new YEKDEM, new YEKA, and new projects are being spoken, and in this situation CDS is around 650. It was 900 before, and this is quite high as compared to 2011-2017 period. And we can see that USD level is 10%, Euro is 7%. The syndication rates of the banks are disclosed, and the debts are almost twice compared to the last year. Therefore, the financing cost has been significantly increased, and in a setting like this one, The cost of the financing is highly
Bu
important.
noktada aslında e, YEKDEM gibi bir mekanizma
Accordingly,
yeni bir YEKDEM'le değiştirip aslında YEK
a
ile birlikte yeni bir
mechanism
model
like YEKDEM
sunuldu.
is
Bildiğiniz gibi
required,
yeni
and
YEKDEM
along
aslında
with
bir
YEKDEM,
miktar TL komponenti olan
a new model was
%48-52 şeklinde bir
announced,
yapı.
and it
Ama
has
şu
a
an
certain
yatırımcılar
amount of
tarafından çok rağbet
Turkish
görmediğimiz
lira
piyasadan
component, and
görüyoruz.
we can
Dolayısıyla
see that
bunun
it is
sebebine
not
baktığımızda
well received by the
şu anki piyasa
investors in the
koşullarında
markets.
özellikle pandemi
And
sonrasındaki
when you look at the reason for
Ukrayna
this,
savaşı sonrasındaki
we can see that
geldiğimiz durum açıkçası
the current
TL
market
anlamında uzun
conditions
vadeli
have
finansmanın
brought
bulunamadığı
us to
ve
a point
bankalarında
that it
yeni
is
yeklenli
not
projelerde
possible to
TL
find
komponenti
long-term
nedeniyle
financing
TL
in
finanse
Turkish
etmek
lira,
istediği
and the
bir
banks
yapıda olduğunu görüyoruz. Dolayısıyla burada bir finansman
want to
iştahından
finance
söz
in
edemiyoruz.
Turkish lira.
Türk bankalarının yer almadığı
Therefore,
bir
we cannot
finansman
speak of a
yapısında
financing
yabancı
appetite
bankalar
here.
veya hisiyeler
In a financing structure without the
şu an
Turkish
biraz önce
banks
söylediğim oranlara göre bu projelerin
is not attractive to the
yabancı
foreign
bankaların
banks either, and
şu anki iştahları
this
iştahların üstünde
project
finansman maliyetleriyle finanse edilmesi şu
requires the
konjonktürde çok
appetite of the
mümkün.
foreign
Bu
banks,
noktada
and
devreye
in
giren
this
aslında bir
conjuncture
var.
it is not very much possible,
Hisse bankaları
and there is the
aslında
PCs
yeni enerji
that are
dünyasının
active
finansmanında
here. Those banks
game changer olabilirler. Bu YEKA'lar tarafında çok mümkün olamıyor. Yani
may help us in financing the new energy world, and it is not very much possible in YEKA because of the local production share. You're already exceeding your time. Maybe you can continue with some solution suggestions. Then I will give the floor to Uğur, because we could hear from you whether or not we have an alternative. Go ahead, please. We have two suggestions.
Söylemek isterim. Burada hisselerin rolünün belki Türkiye Exim Bank'ını kullanarak, belki hisselerin bu
Maybe
yeni enerji dünyasındaki finansmanında aldığı rolün artırılarak enerji
PCA's role could be increased, and the cost in the energy market could be decreased, and I think this is an important mitigant. Another solution suggestion is that if the capital market facilities are used even more, we have seen the green energy company listings in the exchange market, and also we have seen IDEM issuing Eurobonds. Maybe this could help us with financing of the energy world. Well, you've been talking about the foreign resource, and can you please elaborate on this? Is it only the Turkish funds that we have here? Actually, we can see the 10-year performance of YEKDEM. It is one of the, the wind energy has become one of the main actors here. We have to decide whether the wind will be financed here. If it is to be financed, it is not possible to do it with local resources only. We have to make sure that foreign investors transfer their resources to Turkey in one way or another. So what would you say if I were to ask you to list three things? Firstly, I can say it has to be sustainable so that it will be profitable, because they are the two mechanisms supporting one another, and then you require predictability for sustainability. when the foreign investor comes here, they should know the rules of the game, and they have to make sure that the rules will not be changed once the whistle is blown. And profitability is another thing. They have to make a profit, and there is also a cost of opportunity here. With our overall perspective, they have to decide whether or not they would like to be involved. As it's a swift transition to the second round, Yücel, when we were talking with you,
bu yeni YEKDEM'de bizi bekleyen risk ve bu riskin yönetilmesi başlığı altında uyarıların ve
considering the risks with the new YEKDEM and managing the risks here, what warnings or what suggestions would you give? Yücel Çakmak is in İzmir. Well, in the new YEKDEM we are always talking about predictability, and there is a Turkish lira and USD element here. Maintaining the former YEKDEM is an important component for bringing in the foreign investors. The incentives are nice for the Turkish entrepreneurs, but for the foreign creditors it's not supported that much. In order to make it sustainable in terms of its advantages and disadvantages, for example, if they're investing in Ukraine, the Turkish investors are now investing in Ukraine, although there is a war there, and although there is a political risk there. So I think the biggest setback here is predictability, because they have to come in with a very high amount of equity. The solution is always possible. The investor, in our culture, people are used to putting in 10% equity and 90% bank loan, so that is wrong. But the other one is wrong too, I believe. So I believe YEKDEM has to be reviewed if we are aiming at 20,000 megawatts or 30,000 megawatts. Also, the ambiguity should be decreased. Well, when we look at the credit swaps today, we can see the prices low. Maybe it was not attractive in the past, but it can be feasible today. Also, I would like to say a few things about YEKDEM. Firstly, the new investor is investing in 5 megawatt or 6 megawatts only. Therefore, we're not talking about the smaller ones anymore, so everyone must now have a different perspective. This is important for insurability as well. We can see inflation being too high. The new investments are costly, yet replacements are costly as well. And in order not to encounter an incomplete insurance, we should take a look at it. And because of the price ambiguity, the profit-loss ratios are not that high anymore. The companies are making good money now, and they have to be updated in profit loss ratios in order not to have any problems with the damage
Bunun
processes.
haricinde daraltılmış bakım sözleşmeleri görüyoruz.
And
Daha çok yeni yatırımcı
I can see narrowed maintenance contracts,
tesislerde maliyet azaltması için servis anlaşmaları daraltılıyor. Daha dar LTS'ler görüyoruz.
service deals are narrowed,
Dünyada tabii ki risk transferinde risk üzerimize
and
alıyorken
in
sigorta
such a
politikası
world
var. Bu konuyu sigorta politikası
there is a problem with the risk transfer,
gibi notlar paylaşıyor.
so you should be careful about your insurance policies
Son
then.
notunda şu olabilir, sertleşen bir marketteyiz. Hani kredi bulmak zor, sigorta bulmak
We
zor.
are now
Yani
in a
ticari
rigid market.
ortamdan
It is
teknik ortama
hard to find
geçiyoruz. Dolayısıyla
loan
önden
and
bir risk
insurance,
çalışmalarının
and
tesislerde
for that reason
belki önden çok az harcayıp yenileme
it is
dönemlerinde
important
ciddi
to
fayda
work
sağlama
on
imkanları var.
the
Yatırımcılara
risk
bu çerçevede bakmalarını tavsiye ederim.
before,
Teşekkür ederim.
so that should be the perspective of the investors, I think.
Toparlamak istersen özellikle bir de şeye de vurgu yaparak yeni YEKDEM'i de düşünerek.
Well, considering the new YEKDEM, what would you like to say, Hasan?
Ne yapacağız? Atıf yapacağız. Bağlamaya çalışacağım müsaadenizle.
So,
Şöyle işte panelist
what will we
bizden
do
sonra
about the new YEKDEM?
ve sigorta hizmeti ama aslında tereddütle içeri erişim.
Access to finance and insurance are two important things.
Diyoruz, eski ekran kadar güvenli konuşmuyoruz. Bunu hissediyorum.
Zaten şu ana kadar yapılan konuşmalarda
We
özellikle
feel
bunun da-
the new YEKDEM is
Yani
not
burada da haklıyız.
as great as the former one, and we are partly right about this.
İçerisinde hep beraber ama açıklanmadı. Gecikti vesaire. İşte bizler de paydaşlar olarak gerek bakanlığımız nezdinde gerekse işte yapılan
As the
toplantılarda
stakeholders,
görüşürüz. Buradaki asıl konu şuydu. Şu an isminde
we have
yarışma
raised
diye
our
ifade edilen
opinions
konu o zamanlar bu,
before the
anlaşma
ministry,
olmasa da aslında politik olarak zaten masadaydı. Yani yeni eklerin TL bazlı olacağını.
and as a policy it was already on the table.
Ama bunu,
We knew
nasıl
the
olması,
new
nasıl
YEKDEM
olduğunu
was
konuşmak
going to be in
anlamında
Turkish lira,
mümkün olduğunca kendi bilgi paylaşımımızı otoriteye de ilettik. Önemli konular, yani en önemli konu aslında eskalasyon
And
konusuydu. Peki
we
siz de,
shared our insights with the authority.
hiç buna engel bir şey yok. Ama iki bacağı var bu işin. Birincisi finansman bacağı. Zaten bizlerin de orada olması.
So there are two parts here, and one is about financing.
Şu ana kadar konuşulan her şey o masada da konuşuluyordu. Biz de dedik ki TL
Everything
finansman
we
zor.
have
Hatta çok zor.
discussed so far has been raised, and we said
Finansman değil.
financing
Orta uzun
in
vadeli finansman.
Turkish lira is difficult because it is a middle or long-term financing. This, I don't say it is not practical. Still, we have to go with the variable interest rates, and that means another risk. So the banks are saying the same. So the deposit was always there, and it stays there in one way or another, and there is no exit from the system. So a treasurer wouldn't think that way. So therefore they have to do the pricing accordingly, and that's why the rates were higher. So there is an escalation formula based on the sales is 32 kurush, and there is another 8 kurush support for the local equipments. That means 40 kurush support. There is also a cap for the 40 kurush. So there will be a cap then. So it is 5.5 cents roughly. So we calculated
yeni eklem kapsamında. Neden yok?
along with my colleague Volkan Bey, and there is no application for us in the scope of the new YEKDEM because of the expectation of the exchange rate increase, and
dolar bazlı ya da euro bazlı borçlanmaya gidiyor. Dolayısıyla da dolar bazlı bakması.
the borrowing is again fixed based in USD or Euro, so
bir adım geride bekliyor. Bu aynı şey gelenler açısından
the investors abstain from investment.
gelirse de cevap aslında net. Peki bunun çözümü ne? Yani olura bakmamız lazım. Orada birkaç
And what
tane
is the solution?
şimdiki haliyle
We have some suggestions.
fiyatları açıklandı. Takip edenler vardı. Ben de not aldım. Konuşuyorum yine.
The YEKDEM prices have been announced for the fourth quarter,
Yani 75 kuruşa geldi. Bu eskalasyon.
and it is now 74.79.
8 kuruşluk yerli aksam desteği de 19 kuruşa gelmiş. Toplayalım 90 kuruş.
And the local component support was increased from 8 kurush to 19 kurush, so it is around 90 kurush now, which is 5.2 cents. As compared to 2021, the interest rates are much higher, so it is not feasible again. But we will not give up on it. We have to make an adjustment in the escalation.
Yaslanarak bir finansman yapsaydı şu an 5.2 dolar sente düşen bir nakit akımda yatırımcı da finansör de mutlu olmayacaktı.
So
Demek ki bu eskalasyonu biz yeterince korumuyoruz.
the investors and the funders would not be satisfied, so we have to do something else.
Belki en kolay çözüm.
That is the first thing.
İkinci konu biraz ekstrem gelebilir ama biz bunu
Maybe it's one of the easiest things to sort out.
YEKA'lardan bahsettik. YEKA'larda biliyorsunuz güneş santrallerinde 42 ay.
We talked about YEKAs,
var. Yani fethettiğiniz fiyatı 42 aydan daha kısa sürede
and there is an investment process of 42 months, and if you can get it before 42 months, you can sell it to the network, and for YEKA it is 66 months. Yet there is a market about the kurush price you have given.
piyasa fiyatından biraz para biriktirin.
So then
Para kazanılacak fiyatlar değil.
the government is say
YEKA ihale.
to save some money,
Böyle bir otoritenin enerji arz güvenliği açısından yatırımların bir an önce realize
So-
edilmesi bir motivasyonu var ise çok benzer bir yöntem belki YEKDEM içinde düşünülür.
if the authority has a motivation, they can consider a similar method for YEKDEM. So the cap was 5.1 cents. However, the most difficult time of financing is the first year, and the interest rate is high. If authority is determined about 5.1 cents, we have no objections to it, but a certain investment time should be considered.
5.1 dolar sent belki belli bir süre için esnetilebilir, yükseltilebilir.
And $5.1 cents could be increased maybe for some time. And maybe they can make 5.1 USD cent, but in the first years
Yaslanılması demek işin finanse edilebilirliği yönünde borç servisinin daha iyi karşılanabilir olmasını sağlar. Bu da
it means that will be a challenge for the financeability, and
ilk yıllarda oluşturacak daha yüksek olan borç servisinin
it will mean
daha rahat karşılama imkanı sağlar yatırımcı açısından daha fazla öz kaynak koymadan yatırıma koyduğu öz
an
kaynak
opportunity for the investors without putting in too much equity. It may look like an extreme suggestion, but we're now raising it, and we believe it will encourage the investors. If we have the time, I would like to see something about the banks as well. Actually, we have run out of time, but maybe you can say it in very few words. Say that you found the money, your CDS is low, and international funds invest in Turkey
TSKB üzerinde de söyleyebilirim. Herhangi bir konut kredisi, ABD kredisi,
According to the banking legislation now,
katma değeri tartışılabilecek projeler açısından risk ağırlıklı var.
the added value could be discussed.
Sermayenizi yorma oranı, sermaye yeterlik oranı, zorunlu karşılıklar açısından herhangi bir farkı yok. Bu kadar
The capital adequacy rate is not different, so in the green transformation, the financial organizations would like to invest in the renewable energy, and I believe there should be a positive discrimination for the green energy. It will allow us to have more leverage, and it will allow us to bring more financing capabilities. I believe there is a chance of funding here as well. But if we are set back with such challenges, we may not achieve our objectives. So there should be a mechanism to relieve us as well. Thank you very much for covering it so quickly. I didn't want to interrupt you because that should be heard. I don't like to wrap up without covering these topics. We should have talked about this, and Kadir also referred to what you said. And you also referred to cash flow. So we would like to hear from you as an investor, what is the impact of those words on you? We can hear you very well. Speaker is inaudible.
Çözüm önerisini hızlıca sunarak ilerleyeyim. Tüm dünyada enerji arz güvenliği, geleceğe ilgili...
It's not possible to hear the speaker now. Interpretation cannot be provided.
Kar amaçlı olarak düşürmekten ziyade sürdürülebilirliğin sağlanabilmesi için bir enstrüman olarak değerlendirmekle başlamalıyız bence. Bunun için de ülke arz güvenliğinin sağlanması da bu stratejiyle ilerleyeceksek rüzgarın sürdürülebilir olmasına finanse edilmesi gerekiyor. Rüzgarın sürdürülebilmesi için de depolamanın bu YEKDEM mekanizmasına dahil
And for the wind to be sustainable, storage must be added to YEKDEM mechanism as well.
artan maliyetlerin de göz önünde bulundurularak dahil edilmesi.
Of course, the increased costs have to be taken into consideration, and storage must also be added, and that should be priced accordingly. And as the investors, that will make Turkey a leader in wind, and the faster that could be activated, the easier it will be to achieve our targets. We have to make the decision very quickly, and all the investors should undertake their efforts, and I believe storage should also be added to the new YEKDEM. I will wrap it up very quickly. There I have noted down some keywords. Predictability has been emphasized by all the participants, directly or indirectly, and this has been mentioned that it has to be raised to the ministry. I believe some adjustments have to be made. You have also mentioned predictability, prioritizing wind, and reviewing the new YEKDEM mechanism, finding a commonality between the investor and the funder is important, and all the participants have been emphasizing that the green instruments should be placed in the pricing mechanism. Okay, I will stop very soon. Investors should have some derivative products available to them, and it will be a solution for now. So those are my notes so far. And if any of you says, if any of you has a burning question, we can hear. If you have a burning question. Otherwise, you can all go and get your coffee now. Thank you very much.